it's really, again, we do, our various commodities do play across the AI ecosystem. Obviously, with the number one end use application for helium right now is for the manufacturing of semiconductors. A lot of people don't realize that.
All right, welcome back inside our proactive newsroom. And joining me now is Will Gray. He is the CEO of New Era Helium. And Will, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Doing well yourself, Steve.
I'm doing very well. Thanks very much. And I got to say, you put out a really strong update on what's going on at the company because there's so many things that are happening. You're very busy, and so is the team. So let's sort of tackle things, in sort of pieces because there's a lot to talk about here. Let's begin with the Pico Slope Plant project first, because obviously that was a significant update as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah, there's been a lot going on, obviously, from a timing standpoint, especially with the company going public. We spent a lot of time working, working with the SPAC, working through the S4. And so unfortunately, some of the timing, with the funding, that did cause a delay, unfortunately. And so we were in hopes that it would commence in Q2. What it looks like right now, barring any unforeseen circumstances, would be commencement in Q4. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But I think one other thing that we've looked at is in kind of parallel with, trying to work to the de-SPAC process, which, as most people know, it's not easy because obviously you're dealing with numerous regulatory, agencies, the SEC, trying to work through the S4 process. But what has been interesting also is that our midstream gatherer processor that's in the field currently, right? So that's the company that essentially, takes our natural gas, processes the helium. They're actually under new ownership and new management. And so that's really opened up some avenues for the company that have not existed previously. And so I think from a timing perspective, we're kind of looking at some options that could provide us some different methods of ultimately getting our helium one way or the other. I think ultimately that's what the company's main goal is. Again, we produce helium now. It's just per our contract, it's excluded from payment. So again, we produce it, we just don't get paid on it. And so we're looking at, again, various ways of how can we participate, in that. And of course, within our presentations, we've talked about vertical integration, where we build our own plants, where we've kind of integrate our own gathering system. That's definitely, what we're looking to do. But if there are some options with the existing, midstream gatherer processor, then that could be, great as well.
Okay, and even though there was a delay, it's given you some opportunity to sort of look at other things, as you mentioned, including offtake deals and things like that. So it's been able to give you that time to work through that process, which sometimes can drag on a little bit.
Yeah, you're looking, I think, at a lot of projects. Someone a long time ago told me typically, when you look at a project, it typically takes, double the time and double the money. So hopefully here, let's not, we don't want to go down that road, but definitely, our saving grace is, listen, we have the reserves. That's the great thing. They're not going anywhere. We are producing, natural gas as we speak right now. It's nice to see natural gas prices recover a little bit here as of late. So I think that's definitely helped the company out. And, but again, you're right. It's just been the timing has been, it's been unfortunate on the delay, but with that being said, it's also opened up some different avenues to where the company can also utilize, one of our former press releases here a couple of weeks ago was talking about the two main commodities we produce, helium and natural gas. Using natural gas, as a fuel source on the power generation for data centers. So we've just not been sitting idly by while we're trying, twiddling our thumbs while we're working this through. I mean, we're looking at ways to create value for the company. And obviously the data center is at the top of the list. So, the co-development of the 250 megawatt facility in the Permian, that ranks very high. And so there's a lot to that. So obviously, in concert with getting the plant up and going and working with our midstream processor gatherer, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle that we're still working on. that ultimately that will, provide significant value for the company.
Yeah, and that's what people have to understand, that data center, bringing the AI into what you're doing is a big step for the company, but also one that could, provide lots of revenue and things like that. So this is not something that you're like, hey, let's see what happens. There's a real good plan behind this that could really transform what's happening there.
Well, absolutely. And when you look at the company and how we market New Era Helium,
Yeah,
it's really, again, we do, our various commodities do play across the AI ecosystem. Obviously, with the number one end use application for helium right now is for the manufacturing of semiconductors. A lot
mm,
of people don't realize that. And then, of course, with the natural gas and the power generation side, I think you can't turn on any sort of news outlet right now without looking at data centers. And so it's just, dependent upon where they're being located. So Texas especially has been kind of the hotbed of a lot of topics as of late. So is it, Central Texas? Is it more kind of in more the metro areas? I think the Permian Basin is going to be uniquely positioned because of, like anything else, your fuel source, right? Is how efficient and how cheap can you get natural gas? And obviously in the Permian Basin, you may see on CNBC the NYMEX price of natural gas at, $4. Well,
yeah,
in the Permian Basin, under Waha, I mean, it was trading negative. So
mm,
the problem is there's just a lot of natural gas. And so I think a lot of people are really understanding, does this make sense to actually, site data centers where you can get cheap nat gas? So I think, that's where we are a couple of steps ahead of the competition in that regard. And I think, in the next coming weeks, we're going to have some subsequent news to share with the street on kind of what's going on in that respect. I don't want to discount the plant on what we're doing, because that coincides with our ability to fund, our portion of the power side for the plant.
absolutely. It works hand in hand for sure. Will, thanks so much. That was a great update. Really appreciate the time, and it sounds like we may have you back in the next couple of weeks with more updates. So really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
All right, Steve. I appreciate the time, and thanks again. Okay.
All right, sounds good. Will Gray, the CEO of New Era Helium.